Welcome to the Hidden Potential Podcast. I'm your host, Homer Hargrove, and today we are going to be talking about ways to overcome discouragement. At the end, I'm going to give you 3 takeaways that will help you to be able to apply what we talk about today. But let's go ahead and get started with a big thought, and that is discouragement can be one of the biggest stumbling blocks for somebody who is close to breakthrough. Let me say it again. Discouragement can be one of the biggest stumbling blocks for someone who is close to a breakthrough. And if left unresolved, it can completely change the course of someone's future. I want to share a brief story about a time where I was going through a really big time of discouragement when I was a youth pastor. And I remember I was not just discouraged, I was depressed. And I was having a really difficult time. Not only was work-life balance completely out of whack, but I was also going through this very confusing and distraught time to where I was having some dark thoughts. I'm talking about dark thoughts, fantasizing about suicide. And I was feeling discouraged in ministry, discouraged in the church, discouraged in so many areas. And I remember I asked a spiritual leader in the church to talk, and I was like, man, I just need to tell somebody. My wife was starting to get afraid of how intense my thoughts were getting, and I sat down with this person, and I just laid it all out, all the discouragement I had been feeling, all the thoughts and dark places I was going in my mind. And you know how they responded? They said, look, I don't think you should tell anybody else about this. And by the way, I was meaning to tell you that I'm not going to be able to talk with you as much, but just keep all this to yourself. And then just ended the meeting. So I was completely confused and left worse off than before. It literally just told me to bottle it all up and don't tell anybody and just to keep on trucking. And not only did I feel so overwhelmed and such a lack of hope in that moment, but it increased my depression. That isolation just hurt so much more. And thank God my wife ended up finding a ministry to where they just literally would pray for people. And we drove out of town just to go and to have this prayer session. It's kind of like one of those prayer/counseling sessions. And they're usually only an hour long. I ended up being there for over 3 hours and bawling my eyes out. And it was such a helpful moment to be able to share all that I was going through, everything on my heart, without feeling any kind of judgment, but someone really just putting their arms around me and saying, let's pray together. It's going to be okay. And so I hope that in this message today, in this talk, that you will feel a sense of that you'll feel a glimmer of hope in your discouragement, that you'll feel even empowered to keep on moving forward, not to just suppress your emotions, but learn how to also process them as you continue to push for that breakthrough. So whether you're currently discouraged or you want to know how to overcome it in the future, maybe you want tools to help somebody else, here are 7 tips to help you overcome discouragement. And these tips, they help me in my discouragement, and so that's why I want to share them with you. Number 1 is that you need to recognize that you are not alone and that you're not the only one. Now, those are 2 separate things. One, now, you're not alone. You cannot isolate yourself. It's usually our reaction when we're going through discouragement or depression is we push everybody else away. Do not do that. You need to latch on to the people that are closest to you and lean into them. They need to be your strength while you're going through this weak time. And you also need to realize that you're not the only one. That is another isolating thought to make you think that you're the only one going through it because there's something wrong with you. It's simply not true. You are going through something that a lot of people go through. People have to endure and persevere through this, and it can be so beautiful in the end, or it can be so toxic if it's with the wrong the wrong mentality. Number 2. Expose and stop self-defeating thoughts. This is a really big one, and I really would encourage you to take it seriously. You have to. It's not that you can't have a thought. It's not that you can't have a self-defeating thought or have a negative thought, but it's about destroying it after it comes, about rejecting it after it comes. for me, I would get these incredibly self-defeating thoughts that I'm a loser, I only break things, I'm a failure. It's like all these things. As I was experiencing success, as I was winning, I was still having these thoughts. And my problem was I would allow those thoughts to continue to run rampant. I wouldn't reject them, I wouldn't call them out. And it led all the way to those suicidal thoughts. And this is a very dangerous place to be, because if you don't stop those suicidal thoughts, man, heaven forbid, it'll take you to a place where you really don't want to go. And I got to a point where I was literally fantasizing about ways to kill myself, fantasizing about drowning myself. It was so dark, so dark. And I'm sharing the details because I really know that there's someone watching this. You need to know that you're not the only one that's gone that far and thinking how deep it can go. So expose and stop those thoughts. I mean, even having to audibly say to yourself, that is not true. I want to live. It is not true. I am winning. I am doing good. It's okay to have a bad day. And I would even encourage you to have like affirmations that you say in the morning, whether it's on the mirror or in a journal, of just have positive, affirming things to say to yourself about yourself as you start your day, because it will help you to retrain your mind to not allow those self-defeating thoughts to run rampant, to control you. Number 3, identify possible sources of your discouragement. There are simply times where we just get this whole spirit of discouragement. We don't even know where it's coming from. There's other times where there's some culprits. There's some people that are invoking that discouragement on you. Maybe it's the place of work you're in. Maybe you're really not vibing with the culture. For me, there's certain places where I felt so discouraged, and I realized it's not that everybody is just toxic around me and I'm this lone wolf trying to do good in the midst of bad. There's simply some times where my culture, my values are different than the values I have surrounded myself with. The place that you work or volunteer at, perhaps maybe they just have different aligned values. And you may be better positioned to find a place that better matches your values. Or maybe there's just some crummy people in your life that you need to kind of get out. Maybe there's someone that's continuously feeding that discouragement, and you need to set some boundaries to cut those people out from being able to make those kinds of comments into your life. I mean, just look and identify possible sources of discouragement, possible people or things that are happening that are discouraging you. Number 4, make any possible changes to your circumstances. Once you identify the possible sources of discouragement, number 4 is make any possible changes. There's some times where we can't make any changes, but what I am saying is do what you can, pray about the things that you can't. And when you do that, you will start this path of kind of emptying out that toxicity of your life. It's hard to breathe when you're constantly drowning. This step is to just put your nose above water a little bit so that you can start to breathe again. Number 5, engage with a trusted community with transparency. This is one of the most valuable things I learned through my discouragement, is that transparency leads to victory. Being able to just simply openly share what's on your heart and mind, that's a powerful step. That's a really life-giving. And so often in our workplaces, especially in our churches, we don't always have an outlet to be able to share and engage with trusted community. And I will say that I'm so grateful that I had my wife to confide in when I felt like I didn't have community to confide in. But I would say that you should strive to find more than that. I would even suggest that there's been times where I would reach out to certain mentors. That goes back to one of our previous episodes of the right questions to ask mentors, finding a mentor. But having somebody, whether it's your own age or older than you, outside of your immediate family, outside of your marriage, of being able to go to confide in. And let me just, as a sidestep for extra clarity, I'm not suggesting as a man going to find another woman to confide in that isn't my wife. That's not what I'm saying. I'm talking about, let's keep it simple. Let's not overcomplicate it. Let's not create more problems than solutions. I'm talking about in healthy, appropriate settings. And number 5, start a gratefulness journal. Now, this seems like something that is promoted often. I've heard gratefulness journals a lot. For me, honestly, when I started to write in this gratefulness journal, and I had a journal where I'd just write my thoughts, I would write my affirmations, and I would write my gratitudes. And there'd be some times where I felt like it was hard to put those gratitudes, but I allowed myself to have a no limits attitude. There's one time where I said, thank you, God, for this season, the new season of The Walking Dead coming out. Like, it's like, let me just be thankful for anything and everything. And the more that I practiced that gratitude, the more that it shaped the way my mind started to behave, the way that my thoughts started to happen. It changed that. And so it's all about retraining your mind to be built back up again, to lean on being encouraged and opening our perspectives. And I'm telling you, do not overlook the gratefulness journal. I feel like it was one of the most powerful aspects that helped me come out of discouragement and depression. Number 7, journal your true thoughts prayerfully. Journal your true thoughts prayerfully. This is like what I was just saying in the last in the gratefulness journal. I really just encourage anyone, get a journal and just start writing in it. It doesn't mean you have to be a poet. You don't have to be a book writer, but just be real and write down what you're thinking. And there's just something about writing it down that helps you to process those thoughts on paper. And there'd be some times where I would start my journal entry out even as a prayer. It said, God, and I would just write the ugliest things that I was feeling in my heart. And most times by the end of the journal entry, I felt encouraged to where I was ending with hope. There'd be some, and don't get me wrong, there's some times where it's just like I felt hopeless and I was just like, here you go, God. And I was able to write it down. But even just writing down those hopeless feelings, I still felt better at the end of it. It's like you're having this self-therapy in a healthy way. So journal your stuff. And number 8, find an output, a focused activity or hobby to practice. The reason this is so important is because it helps you to output all of that energy. And I'm not talking about that like weird vibes of like ooga booga energy, positive energy, negative energy, but I'm talking about you have all this junk inside of you. And when you find this output that is healthy, it helps you to process that junk. I'll give an example. For me, one of those outputs is working out. I like lifting weights. I like running. I like just physical exercise. And as I'm exercising, I just feel this release of tension from within myself. And there was a time where I was like, well, I moved on from trying to be, as far as like output focus. And I kind of changed it to like, well, let me be multifaceted and let me use this time to also learn. And I started listening to podcasts and try to learn while I was working out. And I literally ended up having an anxiety attack. And for me, I'm not saying it's for everybody. For me, I realized that this was kind of something I needed to keep sacred, that I needed it to be a time where I'm not inputting, I'm only outputting. And I encourage you that whatever that is for you, maybe it's exercise, maybe it's something else. Another thing for me was like sketching, where I'll just sit down and maybe I didn't have the words to say, but I would start drawing. And that simple time of drawing, whether it's like half an hour or less, maybe more, I was able to just kind of have this calm moment to where it seemed almost like a meditation. And I would just draw, whatever came to my mind or heart. And it ended up just being this beautiful experience for me. It's very life-giving. And so again, whatever that is for you, start making time for output, not input. Output, not input. So I hope that these 7 tips are helpful for you on your journey. I want to also give you 3 takeaways to help you put this stuff into practice. Number 1, find a person or a counselor to confide in on a regular basis. Not just for your bummers, but also to celebrate with too. We need people. Was it not in Genesis where God said it is not good for man to be alone? We need people. We need community. So if you do not have somebody, find somebody. And if you really, really, really can't find somebody, then you might need to get a counselor because you need to be able to talk it out. Again, not just for your bummers, but also for things to celebrate with too. Number 2, make a list of possible healthy changes to make. Make a list of some possible healthy changes to make. It's one thing when we think to ourselves like, oh, I should do that. I should do this. I should do that. Oh, that's a good idea. It's nothing until you write it down and start making an action plan. Number 3, start declaring positive affirmations over yourself in the mornings. I'm telling you, you will see a difference. I was talking to a discouraged father the other day who was feeling discouraged within his parenthood and how he was raising his kids. He was trying, but felt like he wasn't doing good enough. And I gave the same thing here. Said, start making positive affirmations about yourself in the morning. Instead of saying, oh, I'm such a bad father, I'm so quick-tempered, I'm so this, I don't spend enough time with my kids. Start your day with saying, today I am going to be a father who spends time with my kid. I'm going to be a father that finds a moment to enjoy with my child. Start having these positive affirmations. I am a loving dad. I am a patient dad. Whatever it is, for you, start declaring those positive affirmations. If it feels too overwhelming, start with 3, work your way up to 5, maybe 10. But don't get so hung up on the details of this. Just start somewhere. All that being said, I want to thank you for tuning into this week's episode. I hope that it was edifying for you. I hope that it made a difference in your life. And can you do me a favor? Can you leave a rating or a review for this podcast? It would really mean a lot to me, and it could help this message make an impact for someone else. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. And until next time, have a good life.